I took a bit of a break, but I am back to give you all your tabletop gaming goodness. And boy, is there plenty of news to go around. We've got some controversy, we've got some follow ups, and of course, we've got some great game announcements. So let's get to it for the week of September 18th, 2023. Our first story is going to be about the new Terraforming Mars campaign on Kickstarter, and surprisingly, it's not about the amount of money it currently has, which as of this recording is around $1.5 million, which is quite a bit and it's definitely going to rank it among some of the top board gaming Kickstarters. That said, though, the big issue is the fact that recently Kickstarter has stated that you need to acknowledge if you used AI art generation in your campaign. And it seems that is the case for this one. According to an interview on Polygon, we've learned some details of how they use the art. First off, I'll admit I'm a little bit confused on this, on whether they actually have the AI art as a part of this expansion product. They did state that the main purpose was to use the AI art for ideas, whether or not they just use that on card art in books, or whether they just said, here's something we'd like, and they had their artist draw a near copy of that. I wasn't really clear on. That said, they were clear that they didn't feed their own art into the generation. If you've never looked at any of these AI generation arts, you have the option of putting in some images, in particular if you want to capture a certain style of an artist. They basically use whatever the AI program had already collected and scraped from the internet. So that's important because if you do use AI art for Kickstarter, they want you to acknowledge any artist you used to make your art. So for example, if I took a particular Magic card artist and used their art to generate something for a piece, I would have to say I'm crediting this artist. Obviously, there should be more implications beyond that, but that's actually part of this whole issue is the idea of AI art. One of the things that is brought up in this example is that for Terraforming Mars, this is the first time they've used AI art. And before all this, the artists who did the art basically are in-house. So that is one of the issues when it comes to AI art, is compensating the artists. If they did use their art, well, they're still making money off this game because they're a part of the company rather than being independent artists. But what does that mean for future Kickstarters and future board games? Because it's a whole lot different if you maybe for a previous game hired an independent artist to do your work and then later on just use AI art to replicate their art for future expansions rather than hiring them again to make more art. This is the kind of issues that are coming up, and so there's a reason why this is a hot topic, because it's not just in board games, this is everywhere. I mean, it's not the main reason, but it's one of the large reasons we have the major strikes in Hollywood. Just look up how they want to use AI scripts instead of rehiring writers to make stories, or even for actors, they want to be able to, for in perpetuity, in which they basically scan the actor, paying them once, and then are allowed to use them as background characters walking around without repaying them every time they would do so. Obviously, there are a lot of issues surrounding AI art, and that's why we need to talk about it here, because it is a big issue. We recently did a story involving Magic the Gathering. They didn't use AI art, but they found out after printing a book that one of the artists they hired did use AI art, in which they said, from now on, you are not allowed to use AI art for any art we commission from you, being just artists in general. Now, in the Polygon interview, they seem to stress that these are just growing pains we're in when it comes to AI technology, and that's technically true. But this is also one of those moments, I think, that a lot of us have actually looked back in time and seen how when technology gets thrown in and we don't pay attention to it, and how it can sort of get abused by those usually with a lot of power and money. And this time we just want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So we want to have more regulations, more watchdogs, just keeping a better eye on how this technology is used so it doesn't get abused. What this means for Terraforming Mars, well, right now, like I said, it's made quite a bit of money, so I think they're currently in the clear. But when it comes to future Kickstarters and future projects and future games, this is going to be something a lot more people are going to keep an eye on. And maybe if, like I said, this time it seems a little bit less egregious because the artists who make Terraforming Mars are still getting paid and still a part of it. But if it was for them to sort of try to sidetrack an artist completely, could be a completely different story. And maybe you won't be able to make as high of a project or sell as many copies as Terraforming Mars is here. But that is for the future, and it might not even be an issue if new laws are passed involving AI. But we're going to once again have to wait and see, but this isn't something that we should just sleep on. And now for a short story that's going to be a bit of a palate cleanser to the last one. A board game carved in sandstone was found in a castle in Poland. Now, supposedly this dates around to the 16th century. It was found where I'm just going to have the location on the bottom here because I'm going to butcher it so bad trying to say it. It probably will force YouTube to actually take down this video. Now, the archaeologists who found this state that they believe that the board was either carved and created by the people who actually constructed the castle, probably used for gambling because that's one of the oldest ways to pass time, or actually the children and servants who lived in the castle originally. And one of the reasons only just found was this castle apparently has just swapped hands so many times. It's now sort of in ruins, and only now it seems to be getting that really deep look from archaeologists compared to all the years it's existed. But it's still a really awesome find. They were also pretty confident on what the game actually was. Based on the board carved into the stone, they believe it is Mills, or as some people know, Nine Men's Morris. This is a very old game, and one that I think actually is technically solved at this point. But still, it's a great glimpse into how board gaming still existed as a way for entertainment, an awesome find and a look into how people entertain themselves into the past, and really curious to see what else could be found in this castle, be it more games, or just maybe some of the food and drinks they had along the way for their game nights. We now move on to the German company Haba, which seems to be in some financial distress. They recently applied for self-administration from the German government, which seems to be, at least as compared to like bankruptcy court. But to my knowledge, while it was compared to, I didn't see anyone actually say they're actually going bankrupt. I think it's just financial issues for now. Basically, this is allowed for companies to self-administer and make their own changes that are significant to help them make more money, but it's only given to companies that they believe show a good chance of actually being prosperous on their own without, government intervention. So I assume that's usually a good sign if they approve of this. Or at least, I guess, a good outlook might be the better case. Haba is known, if you don't know, for making games more aimed towards children like Rhino Hero, but they also make other products including wooden toys, furniture, and clothing. Now, what we do know is that they are going to close their clothing line. They're not going to focus on that. They said they want to focus more on the toys. Didn't say anything about the furniture or technically board games, but board games might fall under the toy category. It's also been said they may cut up to 33% of their workforce, which would be quite a bit. Now, hopefully they will be able to steer clear of any huger issues, as well as, of course, keeping their board game section alive. It should also be noted that they actually brought in a lawyer to help them out. So it's not just them saying we're self-administrating and just talking amongst themselves. They have brought in someone who is an expert in reorganization of financial issues. So they will have some advice, and hopefully they will take all the paths to make sure that this company still stays in the marketplace. And now another update on the Magic the Gathering theft at Gen Con. If you missed all the other news roundups, basically $300,000 of supposed product were stolen off the game floor, most of it being Magic the Gathering. Now, we have learned a few more stories, but the big thing is that the two people, Thomas and Andrew, that were suspected of the theft have been officially charged felony theft. If they are found guilty, they can face up to 6 years in prison as well as a $10,000 fine. We also learned that they went to the Asmodee booth, but there were people working there, so nothing was taken from that booth. They changed the names on their badges, which is interesting to me because that shows some forethought in making sure that they're not identified. Yet they didn't wear masks, which easily could have, as well as wearing a shirt that is the reason why they were prime suspects to begin with. So definitely not a lot looking in their favor, though. Like I said, they're still suspects. They may be charged, but they haven't been found guilty yet. And we also learned how the product was found. Apparently, the product, whether it was sold by them or through a third party, was sold to an unnamed person. This person bought it for around $4,000, then heard of the story, contacted a lawyer who contacted the Indianapolis police, saying that, I think we have your product. From that, we did learn that it was actually about $195,000 worth of cards, but also some D&D product. Still quite a bit. And of course, that is still a whole lot more than the $4,000 that the guy paid, but it was illegal goods, so To my knowledge, that guy isn't going to be charged because he didn't know he was buying the illegal stuff and he turned it over right away. But I'm sure if that person comes up, that they'll be in the court case probably as a witness, would be my guess. And because of that, I'm curious whether anyone else was involved. Like I said, are there third parties that helped deal with the stolen goods, which I would assume, if they are found, are going to be attached to this court case. There is no date yet for when the trial actually is going to be held. When that court case actually is held, I'm sure I'll do another story there to give you the final results of this entire heist. And our final story, though, is about a passing of a huge force in the world of tabletop gaming, in particular, Magic the Gathering. Sheldon Menery, who is known as the godfather of Commander, passed away due to cancer. Now, you probably know what Commander is if you've just been near or adjacent to Magic over the last decade. But if you don't, basically you have one card that is your leader, aka your commander, who not only you can cast multiple times, but instructs how you're allowed to build your deck based on its color identity. This format became hugely popular because it's really friendly to those who just have a wide collection of cards, because it's a singleton format combined with the way it works. It's a bit more friendlier if you want to play those weird pet cards that are big and strong, but maybe are a bit too slow or don't work out right in the regular 60 card format. Now, this actually all stems from an older format called Elder Dragon Highlander, aka EDH, and that is actually where Sheldon comes in. He was first introduced to this format way back on a military base, and he's basically the one who actually refined it, because initially you can only use the Elder Dragons, hence the Elder Dragon Highlander, and making it a bit more accessible and a bit more popularized to the point where Magic actually released sets for Commander, for EDH, but renamed it Commander, which is why we all know it now as Commander. And he didn't just stop there. He made a Commander committee, which, unlike if you think of, I think, basically any other TCG that's still around and has formats, this isn't run by Wizards of the Coast. He and the committee would make the ban list and any other rulings. Granted, not many changes happen that often, but was a part of this basically till the last days. So he not only helped bring it into prominence, but kept guiding it his entire life. And even if you aren't a big Commander player, he still probably had a huge influence on you. He was a Magic the Gathering judge until 2011, and I've heard multiple stories of how he made big changes and helped really catch some big issues that were happening in the pro scene of Magic the Gathering. I don't have a personal story to share. Unfortunately, I never had the chance to meet him. However, when it comes to Commander, that has been a huge part of my life. I was there when it was still being called EDH, but had the more common rules we're used to today when you can use any legendary. I remember when my friend first learned about it, this is across country, and he told me when I was going to visit him once, being like, bring all your cards, or at least your rare binders. I got this awesome new format to show you. And I made 2 decks there. I made a blue-black deck, as well as a white-green-blue, aka Bant deck, which that Bant deck I still keep around because it's just good stuff and actually is still pretty fun to play. And of course, my brother, who's also a big fan of Magic, this was just the perfect format for him. He's one of those players who can read a card and think of all the weird ways he can abuse it and come up with silly strategies. So he has tons of different decks, and this has been one of the ways we've definitely bonded. We still always talk about what cards are good for decks or what do we do with this. We look at each other's decks and maybe give suggestions and, of course, have fun playing it. It's just one of those formats that I think just worked really well for me and for a lot of others, not just in terms of being able to use cards that are really important for us. For example, I have a Sliver deck with Sliver Queen because Sliver Queen was actually one of the first singles I ever bought. And this is back before it jumped up into the triple digits. It was much cheaper when I bought it as a small kid. And being able to use that card without feeling like I'm basically losing because I'm throwing in a card that will stall me or brick me is a big deal. And I know for a lot of people that is an issue. They can build a deck that feels more them, or they can feel they can have fun with a silly deck and still, have a good time, even if it's just card art that people are looking to the left. It's just a format that even if you play competitive with a CDEDH, I still think it's fun. You can play the way you want to, which I think actually was probably the biggest problem with the rules committee, as they had to try and come up with rules that worked for everyone, which of course, honestly, for me personally, Commander works best with everyone having their own rule zero for their play group. But regardless, I do believe These are all things Sheldon saw in the format and why he chose to champion it so hard. And I mean, that's why he worked with Wizard of the Coast to try to make sure certain cards were printed, or when a bad one was, they said like, hey, we cannot see cards like this again. I'm looking at you, Nameless Nemesis. It's going to be a big loss. So whether you are new to Magic and just curious, or a Commander veteran, do try to fit in a game of Commander maybe sometime this week, because that is the point of it. It's to get together with friends, get together with people who loved this game, and have a fun time with it. So once again, this is a huge loss, and one that stings for a lot of us. Whether you got the chance to meet him, or like me, it's just what he brought to the table and experiences help make sure you had more fun when playing Magic. All right, let's get to some news announcements. First, we're going to visit Stonemaier with their new game Apiary. In this game, apparently humanity has disappeared or died off. I don't know if that's the thing we'll learn in the game, but basically bees have ascended to be the new sentient race. They're going to explore space and try to use your worker bees most efficiently before the great hibernation occurs. Then CMON had a bit of an expo, and there are two main games I've found that were announced there. First, we have Deceased, which is actually Zombicide featuring DC characters. So we now have a way for you to mix your Marvel and DC heroes and villains together. Granted, some of them may be dead on arrival. Then we have Cthulhu Dark Prominence, which is actually a spin-off game in the world of Cthulhu Death May Die. However, this is actually going to be a re-implementation of another game, A Study in Emerald, making this, I believe, the third time this game has been reworked and reprinted, though this time under a new name and now part of technically an established universe. I mean, Cthulhu's established, but it's CMON's Cthulhu. From there, let's talk about Disney Lorcana. I know a lot of people are really mad about the lack of availability. Unfortunately, for the first set, you're going to have to wait until 2024 for that reprint wave apparently to arrive. But we do have the second set, which we now know the name is The Rise of the Floodborns, aiming to be released around November 17th for the in-game stores, and then around December 1st for your big box stores. This one, if you can't guess from the title, has a more focus on those Floodborn characters, those alternate reality shifts of characters, and will feature some new stories, including Winnie the Pooh, which has some hilarious art of him as like a honey wizard, as well as some other movies that weren't featured in the previous set. And then there's also a special promo set they're releasing. I believe it's the Disney 100 set. Basically, it features alternate art, and I believe it's actually signed by the Disney artists who made them. This is supposedly going to be released for around only $50 later this year. However, looking at everything else that's been happening, good luck getting it at that price. Then Space Cowboys is releasing a game called Perspectives Orange Box. It seems that this perspective line is just going to have different colors, so there'll be a green or blue box or whatever, I assume in future things. It is a cooperative case-solving game in which you need to work together to solve multiple cases. This comes with 3. However, there is a hitch on how you're allowed to share information. It seems like you all get your own separate documents, and it says you can't say directly what's on them. I don't know if that means like one player has to only draw and one can only speak in rhymes or something crazy like that. However, if you enjoy this cooperative mystery games, you may want to keep an eye out on this one. And finally, going back to trading cards, we have 2 interesting products. The first one is for MetaZoo. This is a trading card game that initially was a Kickstarter. It seems this new set, though, is actually going to be collaboration with Hello Kitty, titled MetaZoo Karami's Cryptid Carnival. So definitely an interesting crossover there. And speaking of crossovers in TCGs, Magic the Gathering is releasing the My Little Pony The Galloping Part 2. If you don't know, they released promos for first one featuring only a few of the characters back in 2019. This completes at least the main 6. Now, this is important because Twilight Sparkle has a win condition if you control all 6 of the main characters. This is going to be part of their Extra Life promos. Basically, if you buy this, the money is going to go to Extra Life, which in this case is going to help out the Seattle Children's Hospital. So it's a way for you, if you have the first cards, to finish up and be able to build your alternate win combo while also helping out as well. But that is all the news we have this week. A lot of stories, a lot of game announcements. Let me know if any of these are things that you care about, whether you are excited about any of the announcements, whether the AI art is a big deal for you, or if you just want to talk about your experiences playing Magic the Gathering Commander. I'd love to hear everything you have to say in the comments down below. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I'm Will, and I'll see you next time on the News Roundup.